Part 1, The War Within, The Birth of Discipline. Hook. Most people think the battle is out there, against the world, against time, against luck. But the real war? It happens in silence. It's the war between who you are and who you know you could become. Ethan used to wake up every morning with good intentions. He'd tell himself, "Tomorrow I'll start." Tomorrow, he'd wake up early. Tomorrow, he'd go to the gym. Tomorrow, he'd finally work on the business idea that had been sitting in his notebook for years. But every time tomorrow came, the same thing happened. He'd hit snooze. He'd scroll his phone. He'd promise himself again, just one more day. Ethan wasn't lazy. He just couldn't understand why he never followed through. Deep down, he wanted to change, but something invisible kept pulling him back. It wasn't the world. It was his mind. The mentor's challenge. One afternoon, while walking through a local park, Ethan met an old man sitting quietly on a bench feeding the birds. The man's suit was simple but neat, his posture calm, his eyes sharp. The old man noticed Ethan's slouched shoulders and restless sighs. "Rough day?" he asked. Ethan nodded. "I just can't seem to stay consistent. I start things, but I never finish them. I guess I just don't have discipline." The old man smiled knowingly. "Discipline, huh? That's not something you're born with, son. It's something you build, like a muscle. And it starts with understanding your greatest enemy." "Enemy?" Ethan asked, confused. "You mean myself?" "Not exactly," the man said, leaning closer. "Your enemy lives inside your mind. It whispers comfort. It tells you to rest, to wait, to play safe. It sounds kind, but it's the voice that kills your dreams." The man introduced himself as Mr. Hale, a retired entrepreneur who had built and lost several businesses before finding his own version of success. He spoke calmly, but every word carried weight. "Your mind," he said, "was built for survival, not greatness. It wants comfort, not growth. Every time you try to rise, it resists, because growth feels dangerous to the part of you that craves safety." Ethan frowned. "So what do I do? Just ignore it?" Mr. Hale chuckled. "Not ignore it, understand it. You can't win a war you don't understand. The law of resistance." Mr. Hale picked up a small stone from the ground and handed it to Ethan. "Hold this," he said. "Now try to squeeze it as hard as you can." Ethan gripped the stone tightly. His hand trembled after a few seconds. "Feels like work, doesn't it?" said Mr. Hale. "That's resistance. Your muscles grow stronger every time you push against it. But stop resisting, and they weaken." He tapped his temple. "Your mind works the same way. The more you push against its resistance, its fear, its excuses, the stronger your will becomes." Ethan looked at the stone, then at his trembling hand. "So every time I avoid hard things, I'm training my brain to quit?" "Exactly," Mr. Hale nodded. "And every time you do the hard thing, you're training it to obey." The first test that night, Ethan couldn't sleep. The old man's words echoed in his head. "Every time you do the hard thing, you're training your mind to obey." The next morning, his alarm buzzed at 5:30 a.m. His body screamed, "Go back to sleep." But this time, something inside him whispered back, "Do it anyway." He sat up. His head pounded. His eyes burned. But he swung his legs out of bed and stood up. That single act, getting up when he didn't feel like it, felt small, but something changed inside him. For the first time, he didn't wait for motivation. He acted. He brewed coffee, opened his notebook, and began writing down what he wanted to accomplish that day. Not someday, today. It wasn't perfect. He got distracted, lost focus, and felt the pull to quit several times. But he kept reminding himself, "Discomfort is proof that I'm growing." By 8 a.m., he felt a quiet pride. Not because he achieved something huge, but because he won against his own mind for the first time. Understanding the enemy. That evening, Ethan met Mr. Hale again. "How'd it go?" the old man asked. Ethan grinned. "I got up early. It was awful, but I did it." Mr. Hale smiled. "Good. Now understand this. That feeling of discomfort, that inner resistance, will never disappear. But you can learn to use it as fuel." He leaned back on the bench. "Most people think pain means stop. Successful people know pain means progress. The moment you feel resistance, That's when your mind is trying to protect your old limits. Push through, and those limits expand. Ethan nodded slowly. So discomfort isn't my enemy. It's my signal. Exactly, said Mr. Hale. The mind that once held you back will eventually start obeying you. But it takes repetition. Each time you act against resistance, you rewire your brain. You're teaching it who's in control. The turning point for the next few weeks, Ethan practiced. He woke up early, trained, studied, and worked on his business ideas, even when he didn't feel like it. Some days he failed. But he didn't quit. Every time the inner voice said, "Take it easy," he smiled. That voice had become his signal, the sign that growth was near. Then one morning, something strange happened. He woke up before the alarm. No battle. No resistance. Just action. That's when he realized he had started to reprogram his mind. He was no longer controlled by feelings. He was guided by purpose. Lesson of Part 1. The First Victory. Mr. Hale's final words for that day stayed with Ethan forever. Your mind isn't your enemy, Ethan. It's your training ground. Every challenge, every doubt, every whisper of comfort, they're not obstacles. They're the weights you lift to grow stronger. You're not fighting the world yet. You're fighting for control of yourself. Win that war, and nothing can stop you. Ethan walked home that evening under the fading orange sky, holding the small stone Mr. Hale had given him. It wasn't just a rock anymore. It was a reminder. Discipline wasn't about perfection. It was about showing up when it's hard. And that's how transformation begins, one decision at a time. End of Part 1. The War Within. Part 2. Discipline over motivation. The secret power of consistency. Coming next, would you like me to continue and write Part 2, 1,000 words, in the same story style, where Mr. Hale teaches Ethan how to build discipline over motivation through small, consistent habits? Part 2. Start small, win big. The art of self-command. Hook. Most people wait for motivation to knock on their door. But champions don't wait, they move. Because they've learned a secret: discipline isn't built in a day. It's built one small promise at a time. Ethan had been waking up early for 2 weeks now. The first few days felt like a war. His mind screamed for comfort, his body begged for more sleep, and his thoughts whispered, "What's the point?" But every morning he pushed through, and something inside him began to change. Still, there were moments of doubt. He'd look at people who seemed effortlessly disciplined, athletes, entrepreneurs, creators, and wonder, how do they make it look so easy? Mr. Hale, as always, had the answer. They met again on their usual park bench. The morning air was cool, and the world was quiet. The perfect time for lessons about the mind. The lesson of the seed. "Tell me," said Mr. Hale, tossing a small acorn into Ethan's hand. "What do you see here?" Ethan looked at it. "A seed?" Mr. Hale nodded. "A seed, yes. But inside it lives an oak tree, one of the strongest things in nature. It doesn't grow overnight. It grows by habit. A little sunlight, a little water, a little time, every single day." He leaned forward. "Your mind works the same way. You can't command it to become strong instantly. You must train it slowly, with repetition. Every small act of discipline plants another seed of strength." Ethan rolled the acorn between his fingers. "So, consistency is the sunlight?" Mr. Hale smiled. "Exactly. Growth happens not in leaps, but in layers. People lose hope because they can't see the results right away. But the roots are forming long before the tree appears." The struggle of small steps. Ethan took that lesson seriously. He started small, making his bed each morning, journaling his goals, reading for 15 minutes a day, taking a cold shower even when he didn't feel like it. At first, these tiny habits felt meaningless. They didn't seem big enough to change anything. But one morning, while driving to work, he realized something. He felt different. He wasn't rushing anymore. He wasn't hesitating. He was calm, centered, in control. Those small habits had started to rewire his thinking. His brain, once addicted to comfort, was beginning to expect challenge. The resistance was still there, but quieter now. He thought of something Mr. Hale had said earlier. The mind learns by repetition. The more you teach it to obey, the faster it listens. Invisible progress. Weeks passed. Ethan didn't feel like he was doing anything extraordinary. But when a coworker complained about being too tired to work on their goals after hours. Ethan smiled quietly. He used to sound just like that. Now, he understood something new. Real progress is silent. It happens when no one's watching. Every morning, every repetition, every time he acted instead of hesitated, his mental armor grew thicker. He started to appreciate slow progress, not as weakness, but as proof that he was building something permanent. You can't run before you walk, he reminded himself. And you can't master your mind before you master your mornings. The command one afternoon, Ethan arrived early at the park, carrying 2 cups of coffee. Mr. Hale smiled as Ethan handed him one. Good, said Mr. Hale. You're starting to think ahead. I've been doing everything you said, Ethan replied. Small steps every day. But sometimes, I still hesitate. I still argue with myself before doing hard things. Mr. Hale nodded. Then it's time you learn the next lesson, self-command. He placed his coffee down. The secret to power is simple. When you give yourself an order, obey it instantly. No debate. No delay. Just act. Ethan frowned. That sounds easy, but it's not. Of course not, said Mr. Hale. The weak man listens to his feelings. The strong man listens to his word. The test of the word. The next morning, Ethan tried it. His alarm buzzed at 5:30. His mind whispered, just 5 more minutes. He didn't argue. He moved. Later that day, his co-worker invited him out for drinks. Ethan had planned to work on his side project. His old self would have said yes, but his new self remembered, obey your word. He smiled politely and said, maybe next time. Then he went home, turned on his laptop, and got to work. Each time he followed through on his word, something powerful happened. He trusted himself a little more. Mr. Hale's voice echoed in his memory. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, your mind learns that your words have power. Every time you break one, it learns to ignore you. Ethan was beginning to understand. Confidence wasn't about arrogance. It was about reliability. The kind that starts within. The voice of comfort. Weeks later, the voice of comfort tried again. It came softly. You've done enough. Take a break. You deserve it. But Ethan had learned to recognize that voice. He smiled. Nice try. Instead of giving in, he went for a run. His body complained, but his mind obeyed. Halfway through his run, he felt something shift. The hesitation was gone. The decision had already been made before he even started. That's when he realized self-command had become his nature. Becoming the master. That evening, he sat with Mr. Hale again. You're not fighting your feelings anymore, said the old man, noticing Ethan's calm smile. I think I'm starting to understand, Ethan said. Discipline isn't punishment. It's freedom. When I obey myself, I don't waste energy arguing with my emotions. I just do it. Mr. Hale nodded. That's the essence of mastery. You've trained your mind to serve you, not rule you. And that, he said, pointing to his temple, is the foundation of greatness. He paused. Remember this, self-command is built by small victories. Each time you rise when it's easier to rest, each time you act when others delay, you strengthen the bond between your word and your action. That bond is your power. Ethan looked out across the park. The trees swayed gently in the wind, a living reminder of steady growth. He finally understood what Mr. Hale meant the first day they met. Your mind isn't your enemy. It's your training ground. Lesson of Part 2, The Power of Consistent Obedience. That night, Ethan wrote in his journal. The mind grows through repetition. The self grows through trust. Every time I do what I said I would, I build strength that no one can take from me. He smiled and placed a little acorn on his desk. It was no longer just a seed. It was a promise. He wasn't chasing motivation anymore. He was becoming the kind of man who acted without it. And that was how small steps became powerful victories. End of Part 2. Start small, win big. The Art of Self-Command. Part 3. The Power of Persistence, Building an Unbreakable Mind. Coming next. Would you like me to continue and write Part 3, 1,000 words, in the same Napoleon Hill-inspired story format, where Mr. Hale teaches Ethan about persistence and emotional control as the next stage of mastery? The Fire Within, Turning Pain into Power, Part 3, inspired by Napoleon Hill's principles, 1,000 words. The storm hit at 2 a.m. Thunder roared through the valley. and Daniel sat alone in his small apartment, staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep. The company he'd built over 3 years had just collapsed. His business partner had walked out, taking the best clients with him. His savings were gone. For hours he replayed it all in his mind, the betrayal, the loss, the shame. Pain filled his chest like fire. He wanted to run from it, drown it out, forget it even existed. But that night, something inside him whispered, "Don't run. Stay." That whisper changed everything. In the days that followed, Daniel stopped blaming others and started observing his pain. It wasn't just physical or emotional, it was transformational. He began to realize what Napoleon Hill meant when he wrote that every adversity carries with it the seed of an equal or greater benefit. Pain was not his enemy. It was his teacher. For the first time, Daniel faced the truth. He had been comfortable. He had wanted success without struggle, victory without sacrifice. But life had other plans. Pain stripped him bare. It exposed his fears, his laziness, and his excuses. And as brutal as it was, he began to see the purpose behind it. One evening, while walking through a nearby park, Daniel met an old man sitting on a bench feeding the pigeons. The man noticed Daniel's heavy expression and said gently, "You look like someone wrestling with his own shadow." Daniel laughed bitterly. "I lost everything." The old man smiled. "No, you didn't. You just found your fire." Daniel frowned. "Fire? Son," the man said, tossing crumbs to the birds. "Gold is purified through fire. So are men. Pain burns away what's weak. It leaves behind what's real." Those words hit Daniel harder than any loss. That night, he wrote in his notebook, "Pain is not punishment, it's preparation." He decided he would no longer run from discomfort. He would walk toward it. At first, it wasn't easy. Every morning when the alarm rang, his mind whispered excuses. "You need rest. You're not ready. You've lost too much." But Daniel remembered Napoleon Hill's warning. "Every time you allow fear to control your actions, you surrender your destiny." So he did the opposite of what fear demanded. When his mind said stop, he took one more step. When it said rest, he worked an extra hour. When it said wait for the right time, he moved now. Slowly, the fire of pain began to change its shape. It stopped burning him and started forging him. Weeks turned into months. Daniel started a new venture, smaller, humbler, but built with discipline instead of ego. Each setback became a lesson instead of a wound. When he faced a difficult client, he didn't complain, he listened. When things went wrong, he didn't curse life, he asked, "What is this trying to teach me?" Every time he faced pain, he found strength. Every time he faced fear, he found freedom. He began to notice something powerful. The pain that once scared him now energized him. He stopped needing motivation because his new identity was built on discipline. He had become the kind of man who acted instead of waiting to feel ready. One cold morning, as he jogged through the park where he'd met the old man, Daniel realized something profound. Pain had given him confidence, not the loud, boastful kind, but the quiet strength of someone who had suffered and survived. He thought about how most people avoid pain. They chase comfort, seek shortcuts, and then wonder why they feel unfulfilled. But comfort never built greatness. It never forged steel. Pain had done what comfort never could. It had revealed who he truly was. A few months later, Daniel was invited to speak at a local business seminar. Standing before the audience, he began with a story. "I used to think pain was my enemy," he said. "But I was wrong. Pain is a mirror. It shows you the truth about yourself. When you stop running from it, you discover power you didn't know you had." He looked around the room, at the faces of people carrying their own invisible burdens. "Pain is not here to destroy you," he continued. "It's here to shape you. Every failure, every betrayal, every heartbreak, it's not the end. It's the beginning of who you were meant to become." Silence filled the room. Then someone started to clap. Soon the whole room stood. Daniel smiled, not because of the applause, but because he finally understood his purpose. That night, he opened his journal and wrote one final note. "When pain comes, don't run. Stand tall. Ask what it's teaching you. Let it burn away your weakness until all that's left is strength." He closed the notebook, took a deep breath, and whispered, "I'm not afraid anymore." For the first time in his life, he meant it. Lesson of Part 3. The fire within pain is not punishment, it's transformation. Every difficulty carries wisdom, every failure hides a gift. The secret is not to avoid pain, but to use it. The stronger you become at facing discomfort, the closer you move to mastery. When you stop fearing pain, you stop being controlled by it. And that is the beginning of true power, the kind Napoleon Hill called the mastery of your own mind. Would you like me to continue with part 4? The enemy within, breaking the chains of excuse. In the same style, story-driven, 1,000 words, easy American language, Napoleon Hill inspired? Part 4. The enemy within, breaking the chains of excuses. Inspired by Napoleon Hill's philosophy, 1,000 words. The sun hadn't even risen when Daniel's alarm went off. He groaned, rolled over, and stared at the dim red glow of the clock. 5:00 a.m. His mind whispered softly, "You deserve to rest. One morning won't hurt." He almost agreed. Almost. But then he remembered that voice, the same whisper that had held him prisoner for years. The whisper of comfort, logic, and delay. The one that sounded reasonable, but always left him weaker, and he realized that voice was the real enemy. Daniel sat up, rubbed his face, and said out loud, "Not today!" He got up, laced his shoes, and stepped into the cold morning air. Each breath burned his lungs. His legs felt heavy. His thoughts fought back. "You're tired. You worked hard yesterday. You can start again tomorrow." But with every step, Daniel answered those excuses with one truth: discipline beats comfort every time. He was no longer just fighting laziness. He was fighting for his mind. A few hours later, while sipping black coffee at his small desk, Daniel thought about something Napoleon Hill had written. The man who masters himself can defeat any other challenge life sends his way. He realized the hardest battle wasn't with the world. It was with his own thoughts. Excuses were clever. They never shouted, they reasoned. They came disguised as self-care, practicality, or timing. "You're too busy. You're not ready. It's not the right moment." They made failure sound intelligent. Daniel saw now that excuses were the invisible chains that had kept him trapped in mediocrity. They didn't destroy him overnight. They destroyed him slowly, one later at a time. A week later he met with his mentor, the same old man from the park. They sat beneath the same oak tree as the afternoon sun flickered through the leaves. Daniel spoke first. "I've realized something. Pain isn't my enemy anymore. Excuses are." The old man smiled. "Ah, yes. The silent killer of dreams." He leaned forward. "You see, son, every person hears two voices in their head. One says, 'Do it now.' The other says, 'Do it later.' One builds strength. The other builds regret." Daniel nodded slowly. The old man continued. "The trick isn't to silence the second voice, it's to act before it grows stronger. Excuses feed on hesitation. The longer you wait, the louder they get." He pointed a finger toward Daniel's chest. "The moment you say, 'I'll do it later,' you're giving that voice power. And every time you obey it, you lose a piece of yourself." Those words hit Daniel like lightning. That night, he thought back to all the times he had let excuses rule him. The book he never wrote. The opportunities he didn't take. The relationships he let fade. All because he had waited for the right time. But the right time never came. It never does. He grabbed his notebook and wrote 3 words in bold letters across the page. "No more later." The next morning, Daniel tested his new rule. He sat at his desk to start writing a business proposal. 10 minutes in, his mind whispered again, "You're not ready yet." Maybe after lunch. He smiled, almost amused now, and said out loud, "That's the lie talking." He kept typing. The first page was terrible. The second was slightly better. But by the third, he was in flow, ideas spilling out faster than he could write. By noon, the proposal was done. Imperfect but finished. For the first time, Daniel understood something Napoleon Hill had taught, that action is the cure for fear. Excuses only live in your head. The moment you act, they die. Later that week, Daniel spoke to a small group of young entrepreneurs at a community event. He shared his story, the business failure, the pain, the excuses, and the transformation. "Excuses are tricky," he told them. "They don't sound dangerous. They sound kind. They tell you to rest when you haven't earned it, to wait until you feel ready, to play it safe. But every excuse you accept costs you a piece of your potential. He paused and looked around the room. The truth is, the perfect moment doesn't exist. Progress only begins when you act, not when you're ready, but when you decide. The more you wait, the heavier the chains become. The room was silent. Everyone knew that voice inside their own head. After the event, a young woman approached him. She said, "I've been meaning to start my bakery for 2 years, but I keep waiting for the right time. What if I fail?" Daniel smiled kindly. "You will fail. Everyone fails. But failure only hurts for a moment. Regret hurts for life. Start now. You'll figure it out as you go." Her eyes widened, and she nodded slowly. "You're right. No more later." Daniel grinned. "That's the spirit." That night, Daniel sat on his balcony, watching the sunset melt into gold. He thought about how far he'd come, from the man who ran from pain to the man who now chased discipline. Excuses no longer controlled him. They still appeared, but he recognized them instantly, like old enemies showing their faces again. Now, when his mind said, "You can't," he replied, "Watch me." When it said, "Tomorrow," he answered, "Now." He had learned one of the greatest truths Napoleon Hill ever shared. You cannot control what life gives you, but you can always control your response. And every response either builds power or gives it away. Before going to bed, Daniel wrote one more entry in his notebook. Excuses are comfort disguised as logic. They feel safe, but they kill dreams. The only cure is action, immediate, fearless action. Even small steps create momentum, and momentum is the death of hesitation. He closed the notebook, smiled, and whispered to himself, "Tomorrow starts tonight." The alarm was already set for 5:00 a.m. and this time, he knew, he wouldn't hit snooze. Lesson of Part 4. The enemy within. Excuses are not harmless. They are the invisible chains that keep your potential locked away. Every time you say, "Later," you strengthen weakness. Every time you say, "No," you build power. As Napoleon Hill taught, your mind believes whatever story you repeat. Tell it one of action, not delay. Success belongs to those who move, not those who wait. The cure for excuses is simple. Move before you feel ready. Would you like me to continue with Part 5? The Mind of Steel, Building Unshakable Focus and Faith. Next. Part 5. The Mind of Steel, Building Unshakable Focus and Faith. Inspired by Napoleon Hill's philosophy. 1,000 words. The storm outside was nothing compared to the one raging inside Daniel's mind. The rain pounded against the window as he stared at the plans spread across his desk. Sketches, notes, calculations, and half-finished ideas for his new business. Everything looked like progress, yet he felt trapped in confusion. Doubt crept in, whispering its poison. What if this doesn't work? What if you fail again? What if you lose everything? It was the same voice that had stopped him years ago. But this time, Daniel closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and remembered what his mentor once told him. When your mind is scattered, your power is too. Focus is the weapon of the strong. The test of faith. Daniel had been working day and night on his project, a small consulting company to help young entrepreneurs avoid the same mistakes he once made. But lately, progress had slowed. Investors weren't responding. Bills were piling up. His team was losing faith. And though Daniel had conquered excuses, a new enemy had appeared. Doubt. He walked to the mirror and stared at his reflection. His eyes looked tired, but there was fire behind them. He whispered to himself, "I've come too far to let fear win." He remembered something Napoleon Hill had written. Faith is the starting point of all achievement. Without it, nothing has meaning. Daniel realized that while discipline built habits, faith built endurance. Discipline moved your body, faith moved your soul, and without both, no dream could survive. The visit the next day, Daniel met his mentor again under that same oak tree in the park. The old man could sense Daniel's struggle before he said a word. "Your eyes," the mentor said. "They're still sharp, but your mind is tired." Daniel sighed. "I've done everything right. I've worked hard, stayed consistent, kept my word. But nothing seems to move." The mentor nodded slowly. "That's because hard work without focus is like sunlight without a lens. It shines, but it doesn't burn." Daniel frowned. "So what should I do?" The old man smiled. "You must guard your mind the way a soldier guards a fortress. Focus on what you want, not what you fear. he continued. The world will test you. It will send distractions, failures, and delays to see if you're worthy of what you seek. But remember, every time you choose faith over doubt, you strengthen your mind. Every time you choose focus over fear, you move closer to victory. The turning point that night, Daniel did something simple yet powerful. He turned off his phone, closed his laptop, and sat in silence with a notebook and pen. He wrote one question at the top of the page. What do I really want? He stared at those words for a long time. Then slowly, he began to write. He didn't write about money or success. He wrote about impact. He wanted to help others build belief, to teach people how to find discipline, how to silence excuses, and how to live with purpose. And as he wrote, something shifted. His thoughts became clearer. His chest felt lighter. That was the moment Daniel realized the power of focus. When the mind knows exactly what it wants, it becomes unstoppable. He remembered Napoleon Hill's words again. Whatever the mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve. Belief wasn't just wishful thinking, it was mental discipline. It meant holding a vision in your mind so powerfully that nothing could shake it. Faith in action. Over the next few weeks, Daniel built a new routine. Every morning, before touching his phone, he closed his eyes and visualized his goal, not as a dream, but as reality. He pictured his office alive with energy, his clients growing, his team thriving. He felt the gratitude as if it had already happened. At first, it felt strange, maybe even silly. But soon, something began to change. The doubts still came, but they no longer controlled him. He started to see opportunities where he once saw problems. People began reaching out. Doors that were once closed started to open. Daniel realized faith wasn't magic, it was mental conditioning. The more he believed, the more he acted. The more he acted, the more results he created. And the more results he saw, the stronger his faith became. It was a cycle, the same one Napoleon Hill described, where thoughts become things through persistence, vision, and unwavering belief. The distraction trap. One afternoon, a former colleague called him with a tempting offer, a high-paying job. Comfortable hours, no risks. Daniel hesitated for a moment. It was everything he had once wanted. Stability, safety, predictability. But then he remembered the old Daniel, the man who used to live for comfort, who used to run from pain. He looked out the window at the city skyline and whispered, "That man's gone." He politely declined the offer. Later that night, he wrote in his notebook, "When you chase two rabbits, both escape. Focus is freedom. Faith is fire." He realized every distraction, no matter how sweet it looked, came with a cost, the dilution of his purpose. The reward of faith. Months passed. Progress was slow but steady. His business started gaining traction. One of his clients, a small bakery owner, tripled her sales using his guidance. Another opened his first storefront. One evening, Daniel received a handwritten note in the mail. It read, "You helped me believe in myself when no one else did. You didn't just teach me business, you taught me faith." Daniel smiled as tears filled his eyes. He finally understood, faith is contagious. When you live it, others feel it. His success was no longer about numbers, it was about the impact of belief. The lesson of Part 5, The Mind of Steel. That night, Daniel wrote his final reflection for the week. The mind is like steel, it hardens through heat. Doubt is the fire that tests it. Focus and faith are the tools that shape it. He closed his notebook and whispered, "Thank you, doubt, for reminding me what faith is for." Outside, the storm had stopped. The moonlight spilled through the clouds, and for the first time in weeks, Daniel felt complete peace. He knew now. His mind was no longer fragile. It had become steel, and steel bends for no one. Moral of Part 5: When you focus your mind on a single purpose and fill it with unwavering faith, nothing can stop you. Doubt will come, it always does, but it's there to test your strength, not to destroy it. As Napoleon Hill taught, faith is the eternal elixir which gives life, power, and action to the impulsive thought. Stay focused. Stay faithful. Because belief, not luck, builds destiny. Would you like me to continue with Part 6, final part? Becoming Unbreakable, the discipline that builds destiny. With the same style and 1,000 words? Part 6, Becoming Unbreakable, the discipline that builds destiny, inspired by Napoleon Hill. Final chapter, 1,000 words. the morning sun poured through Daniel's window, warm and golden, a light that felt different this time. It wasn't just another day. It was the day he would finally stand before a room full of young dreamers, entrepreneurs, students, and risk-takers, ready to share everything he had learned. But as he adjusted his tie and looked in the mirror, a quiet smile formed. He knew the speech wasn't about his success. It was about transformation. The boy who once doubted himself had become the man who refused to break. The journey comes full circle. Standing backstage, Daniel remembered the long path that brought him here, the failures, the rejection, the nights of hunger, and the silence of people who didn't believe in him. Each scar told a story. Each setback had a message. He whispered, "Everything that tried to destroy me only built me." Then he heard his mentor's voice in his memory. "When the world says you're done, that's when your real work begins." Daniel smiled. The words were truer now than ever. The speech when he stepped onto the stage, the room fell quiet. Hundreds of faces turned toward him, curious and eager. He didn't begin with slides or numbers. He began with truth. "Years ago," Daniel said, "I was sitting exactly where you are, scared, broke, and full of excuses. I thought life owed me something. I waited for luck, for help, for a miracle. But I learned something powerful. Life doesn't give you what you want, it gives you what you become." A few people leaned forward. "I used to chase success," he continued. "Now I understand. Success is attracted, not pursued. It comes to those who develop themselves until they become magnetic." The final lesson. Daniel told the crowd what his mentor had taught him. Discipline is the foundation. Faith is the fire. Focus is the direction. And persistence is the bridge between dream and destiny. He looked at the audience and said, "You can't control the storms of life. But you can control the captain of your ship, your mind." That line hit deep. You could hear the silence between every breath in the room. Then he shared a story from his darkest time. The breaking point. There was a week, he told them, when everything collapsed. His business nearly failed. His car was repossessed. His landlord gave him 3 days to pay rent. He remembered sitting on the floor with his head in his hands, thinking, maybe I should quit. But then he remembered Napoleon Hill's famous line, "Every adversity, every failure, every heartache carries with it the seed of an equal or greater benefit." Those words became his anchor. He decided to hold on just a little longer, to stay in the fight one more day. And that one more day turned into a week. That week became a month. And that month changed his entire life. The turning of the tide. One evening, while working late, Daniel received an unexpected email. An investor he had pitched months ago wanted to meet again. That meeting became a partnership. That partnership became growth. And that growth became freedom. But he told the audience, "It wasn't luck that saved me. It was discipline. It was persistence. It was believing when logic said stop." Then he paused, looked around the hall, and said something that would stay with everyone who heard him. "If you want to build a destiny that lasts, make discipline your best friend and failure your greatest teacher." The power of becoming unbreakable. Daniel explained how discipline is misunderstood. It's not punishment. It's training. It's waking up early when no one's watching. It's saying no when your emotions scream yes. It's doing the hard things not because they're easy, but because they make you strong. He smiled and said, "Discipline is the bridge between where you are and where you dream to be. Walk that bridge every day, and one morning you'll wake up on the other side, the person you were meant to become." People nodded. Some had tears in their eyes. The legacy. When the event ended, a young man approached Daniel and said softly, "Sir, how did you keep going when you had nothing left?" Daniel placed a hand on his shoulder and said, "Because I learned to believe before I could see." He continued, "The world will try to break you, son. But if you train your mind with discipline and fill your heart with faith, nothing can defeat you. Pain will come, but so will power. Struggle will test you, but it will also strengthen you." Then he smiled gently. "Remember, success doesn't start in your bank account. It starts in your thoughts." Daniel's final reflection that night. Daniel went home and wrote his last words in the same notebook where his journey began. "I have learned that greatness is not given, it's built, day by day, with sweat, belief, and discipline. The mind creates the path. The heart walks it. The spirit sustains it." He closed the book and whispered a quiet prayer of gratitude, for the pain, the lessons, the faith, and the fire. He looked around his small apartment. now filled with reminders of growth, and smiled. The man who once feared failure had become unbreakable, not because life got easier, but because he got stronger. The moral of Part 6: the discipline that builds destiny. Success is not a race, it's a transformation. Discipline builds habits. Habits build character, and character builds destiny. When your dreams seem far away, remember this truth from Napoleon Hill. Strength and growth come only through continuous effort and struggle. So don't wait for the world to believe in you. Believe in yourself first. Stay focused. Stay faithful. Stay disciplined. And no matter what comes, never quit. Because those who keep walking eventually arrive. Collision call to action. If Daniel's journey inspired you, if you felt his struggle, his rise, his transformation, then take a moment to subscribe, share, and comment your thoughts below. White heavy checkmark. Share this story with someone who's on their path. White heavy checkmark. Subscribe for more powerful life lessons inspired by Napoleon Hill. White heavy checkmark. Comment one word that defines your journey. Faith? Focus? Discipline? Remember, the world doesn't need more dreamers. It needs more doers with purpose. Be one of them. Your destiny is waiting.